It's all about the client. And for years, it's been all about the law firm. It's now about making sure we're communicating with clients and creating this predictability and efficiency and understanding the technologies and big changes.
You're listening to the Legal Mastermind Podcast with your hosts, Ryan Klein and Chase Williams, the go-to podcast for learning from the experts in the legal community about effective ways to grow and manage your law firm.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of our Legal Mastermind Podcast. We have a special guest today. We have Mary Neitlich. Hi, Mary. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
And then, as always, I have Chase Williams. What's going on, Chase?
Hey, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking for this conversation that we're going to have today. And as everyone that's been listening to this podcast for a bit knows, we're always exploring, the different angles of marketing and business development for lawyers, whether it be, internal, external, from the partners down to, the people that they manage. And today, we're going to be talking about something very unique as far as how lawyers and law firms are preparing for the changes that are always occurring in the industry. And Mary, what can you tell us from your personal background, some of the things that you're seeing that are changing?
Well, as a business development consultant with law firms and attorneys for over 25 years, there have been tremendous changes. I think back when I first started, and email became a thing. And a lot of partners were resistant. They wouldn't even respond to their emails. They'd have their secretaries print them out, and they would dictate to them to send the responses. And then, of course, came websites and then branding. And then finally, branding got accepted and social media. But what's really driving change now is technology and clients. Clients, if we look at the bigger picture with large corporations, gathered together about 6 years ago and formed an organization called CLOC, which stands for the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. And it was a group of in-house counsels and people in charge of pricing and procurement. So it started out with large corporations and large law firms looking at this concept of innovation, predictability, and just more customized, satisfying client needs. But after a few years, it started to do two things. One, larger companies were open to smaller and mid-sized firms providing legal services to them, perhaps not for a bit your company piece of litigation where they needed 75 litigators that was going on for 2 years, but more commodity kind of litigation and other smaller types of corporate work where they could happily work with smaller and mid-sized firms. So this started to sort of hone down pressure on law firms that were smaller to start to pay attention. They didn't have to necessarily get involved in the high technology and innovations that members of CLOC and their outside firms were sort of being pressured to look at, although many have started to adapt artificial intelligence and alternative legal service providers and other ways to accommodate more efficient service. But what happened was the concept of, let me go in and talk to my client, whether you are a mom and pop shop or an employee with 50 attorneys or a large company, and ask the most pressing question. And to me, the most pressing question is, what is it that legal can do, that we can do to help solve a business problem that your company is experiencing? And that's the overriding idea, Ryan and Chase, that seems to be pressing down right now on lawyers of all size firms to pay attention to this change.
What's really the difference between legal operations and innovations and client feedback?
When clients are giving a client feedback interview, you're primarily talking about work delivered. How is the service? What can we do to improve the delivery? Was there any time that we might have been unaware of a burr under the saddle when we did something that was a moment of truth, something we needed to pay attention to and correct? Was anyone in my firm ever rude to anyone in your firm that I'm unaware of? Did we always deliver the documents on time? Those are client feedback questions. What can we do to improve the way we deliver the services to you? That's talking about the way practice of law has been for the past 100 years. Legal operations, or this concept of creating better predictability, innovation, and efficiency, talks about things like what's important to you to solve your business problems? And maybe the client is saying, well, one of the problems we're having is that every time we engage your firm or work with an outside firm, the costs get run away. They're just out of control. And we always go way over the anticipated budget that you've given us. And we need to create a little bit more efficiency and predictability. And that's the conversation that the lawyer can then have and say, well, let's talk about those pain points. So let's identify the biggest pain point that you're having in working with our firm or other firms. That's a source of frustration, not only to you, and maybe this person's an in-house counsel, or maybe this person is a C-level executive in the company, but whoever that person reports to. So maybe you're talking to the president of the company, but that president reports to the CEO. So the question might be, when you report to the CEO, what are the biggest pain points and problems that he's seeing in how we're interfacing with outside law firms? And so from there, you pick up the idea of their pain points. If we know that their biggest pain point is inefficiency, that we said that there would be 2 associates working on the matter and 1 partner, and then the bills come and there were 4 associates, and instead of taking a week to do the discovery, it took 2.5 weeks. That's a big surprise and a big bunch of extra time and painful to the budget. So it might be, we need to know exactly who's going to be billing, when they're going to be billing. Some law firms even have extranauts with their clients, that clients insist that they can come online at any time and see who's billing on a matter. It might be billing, but it could be something else. It could be that the discovery is taking forever. And we know that right now, through artificial intelligence and other products and companies, such as Legalmation or Elevate, that there are products available that can do the discovery and the e-discovery much quicker. And instead of taking 2 weeks of time for people to be researching and pulling the discovery together, it can be done in 2 hours or less by using technology. So it might be a technology question, it might not be, but you have to ask them. So once you've identified what that problem is, Chase, it is then the responsibility of that lawyer to go in and do what I like to call process mapping. And process mapping is, let's identify the problem and let's start to develop a process to minimize the frustration that you're experiencing in working with us or other law firms. And the law firm's goal is to satisfy that client, have them completely loyal, and hopefully increase the amount of work they're getting from the client, or maybe even be able to move into other practice areas to service that client. So it's a very, process mapping is based on the process of Lean Six Sigma, which came originally from Total Quality Management years ago from a gentleman named Edward Deming. And it really talks about making sure we're looking at how the processes of delivering things so that it's as predictable and efficient as possible. I know a lot of people out there, especially litigators, are saying, well, yeah, that's great, Mary, but when we have a litigation matter, you know, we might think there are going to be 4 depositions, but maybe because of what work the other side does, we wind up having 10. So we can't possibly be that specific. But law firms are starting to get more and more specific and more zoned in on that. One of my clients is a small firm with 8 litigators. They're trial attorneys, and they do extensive amounts of very big picture litigation, some for Fortune 500 companies, even though they're such a small firm. And the reason they get this work is they have this product they call their litigation analysis memo. And before they start the process of litigation, they might spend $10, $20, even $30,000 looking at the litigation from soup to nuts at what could possibly go wrong, what settlement might look like, what depositions would look like, what discovery would look like. The amazing thing about this law firm is that they are within 15 to 20% of their predicted budget by the end of this litigation analysis memo. So it can be done. And a lot of other firms are giving flat fees, and especially in repetitive, let's say that you do repetitive contracts. They have 17 vendor contracts. They figure out a way to use technology to cut through the process and make it quicker.
Yeah, let's go down that technology route for a little bit, because I feel like that'd be a good way to kind of discuss about how technology interacts with the pain points that you're discussing. So talk to people about lawyers and kind of how they conduct their business, and especially with things changing so often nowadays, and really have been for quite some time. And we know that our background is a lot of digital marketing for law firms, and we know that partners and lawyers are always pretty resistant to change there. But then I can imagine that they're very resistant to technology, even though they could help them, get through some of these pain points. So, can you maybe elaborate on some other instances of technology being able to minimize pain points?
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite examples comes from the senior director of legal operations for NetApp, and they had 71 vendor contracts completed every year, and it was taking 2 to 3 weeks working with their outside firm to get them each one completed. And it would go from someone in the company to a lawyer, and then go to a paralegal, and then come back to a CEO, and then go back to this person, and back and forth, and just raking up the fees. And it would take, as I said, 2 to 3 weeks to get through the process. And Connie went to several of our outside firms and said, we need to get some technology, some artificial intelligence to create a process to get rid of the redundancies and take the standardization that we can use, customize where we need to, but stop this. It's crazy that we're spending all this money and time. And the law firms that she asked said, yeah, no, we're not going to invest in that technology, and we'll just try to do a better job at being more efficient. So Connie took it upon herself and hired a tech company, an artificial intelligence company, and it took 6 months going back and forth to design it, but she presented it last year. I'm a member of the College of Law Practice Management, and every year we give an award to the innovative idea of the year. And Connie won the Innovator Award last year in October. And she demonstrated the technology and how the process works. And it was just mind-blowing. The information is put into this program, and then it goes to a certain person, and then a certain amount of work is done and whittled down, and the redundancies are taken out. And then the program automatically sends an email to whoever it is that's supposed to get it to review. That person makes their comments, it goes into the software, goes to the next person automatically, and back and forth. And they got the process down to 3 days from 3 weeks. So lawyers are so resistant to this, and they're like, well, look at all these hours we're missing. But look at the fact that these outside law firms just lost this Fortune 500 company as a client because they weren't willing to invest in the technology. Now, a lot of lawyers, the vast majority of lawyers and law firms, are still not doing enough with legal operations, innovation, collaboration, and technology. But there are quite a number that are. There are 5 law firms that I know that have even started their own consulting practice. So Baker & McKenzie has a consulting practice in legal operations, and they will go out and talk to the firm's clients and have these conversations I was talking to you about, and come back and implement. Davis, Wright & Tremaine, which is a firm in Portland or Seattle, maybe both, and they created a consulting firm called De Novo Consulting. And they have pricing and procurement people that work with the attorneys, go out to talk to the clients, and develop the processes and the necessary technologies with companies such as Legalmation or Elevate. There's just numerous technology companies to provide this, to cut the work. Law will be practiced differently in the future. We won't have an associate doing 2 weeks of discovery, but we'll have other ways. The lawyers will be providing the highest value that requires their analysis, their thinking, their gathering of the facts, and moving on. Of course, lawyers don't want to change because it's changing the old billable model that's been around since forever. Back in the late 50s, I think it was 1958 or 59, the American Bar Association went to firms and they said, you have clients that you're taking retainers from. My father was one of those types of clients. He had a small manufacturing facility on Long Island, New York, and he paid his firm a certain fee every year, and that firm was at his beck and call. If he had litigation, if he had contracts, whatever he had, that firm would do the work. But the ABA said, but what happens to the the fact that you could have a client that paid you a retainer and then never used your services or only used a small portion of the retainer. That's not fair. We want you to start billing by the hour. And they opened up this can of worms that became where we are today. Many other businesses, including accounting firms and other service providers, don't charge by the hour. Merger and acquisition, they charge by the project. Finance, banking, private equity. And so law is moving in that direction. I might be dead or retired by the time it completely takes over. But this is where we're going, and the resistance is phenomenal. I feel like that's my job as a change agent, to help sole practitioners to the larger firms that I work with embrace this concept of process mapping, identifying those key problems, and then seeing where technology can be utilized, where would technology be more efficient, and how can the law firm learn to practice in a way where they're still making really good money, but maybe not spending 2 weeks doing discovery or doing contract works that can be done in a matter of moments or hours or days.
Sure, definitely. It sounds like that the litigation analysis memo you mentioned before is a really great way for a firm to stand out. Can you tell us about some other things that firms have done to stand out, to differentiate themselves from their competitors?
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite stories, and it came from one of the founding members of CLOC, this Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. She said to me, we've had firms, this woman was at a huge technology company in the Silicon Valley, and she said to me when I interviewed her for an article that I wrote, you know, it's really great when we can get legal operations in place and use technologies to get the cost down, but what law firms are missing, the thing that firms are missing, and this does not necessarily involve technology for those firms that are not ready to invest in technology. No one comes back to me and says, Connie, it was so great. We created more efficiency in the way we're handling these types of matters for your firm. But what else is problematic for you? What else is another pain point for you that we can talk about to see if we can make it better? She said to me, if a law firm came back to me and said that, I'd fall off my chair. So I think what we're missing is whether, again, you're talking about a small company that just feels like they're having runaway legal costs, to a mid-size or large company. We need to be having these conversations and then sit down and learn about some of these process mapping strategies. That's a whole other conversation. But to get at the root, or how can we do this process? I look at all these extra steps we're having. This would be more cost effective. This would solve your business problem. And that's my number one takeaway for your listeners is ask your clients, what is your biggest business problem that legal can help to solve? And how can we work together to solve it?
You know, it's interesting, you know, talking about these topics. And I like what you're saying about how when law firms are working, they come up with like a great process and they go, oh, you know, wait a second, this is working out so well for us. I bet this would work really well for other law firms. And they go out and do their own consulting, or they make their own complete other company or business that actually does it for elsewhere. I think that they say that necessity is mother invention, or something like that.
It's true. And it's amazing to me as I've gone to the CLOC conference now for a couple of years to see more and more firms developing their own consulting arms and offering consulting services. Yeah, other law firms hire them and other in-house legal departments hire them to help to solve some of these problems. One of the biggest trainings that I do is working with partners in role-playing and having these conversations. My favorite thing to do would be at a retreat or a partner meeting to bring a client in and actually have this conversation with the client in front of all the partners and the attorneys so that they can hear what the client is saying. You know, so I've been doing client feedback interviews for 25 years, but this is different, right? This is different than how is the service. This is, I want to be part of your team. I want to help you solve your problems. I see myself not as someone who just solves this legal issue for you, but helps to be preventative or proactive, or looking at the bigger picture of what else could be coming down the pipe. This is where social media becomes so important. Because if you are someone in social media who understands content marketing, and most, I would say vast majority of lawyers don't, you would be posting content not about congratulations, this lawyer's a super lawyer, but about the industry that you work in and providing information about what's going on in the industry and content. all of this focused on the client solving their problems. And I'm doing it by providing small bits of information on LinkedIn articles, on blogs, on my website, on occasional e-blast emails. And I'm involving my clients in interviews for articles that I write because we're all in the same industry and I want to show my expertise. So all of this is what's really important to differentiate yourself from other people in your firm. And this is what I work with so hard to get clients to create that differentiation, not only by having proactive conversations about innovation, but also by showing their expertise by consistently giving small bits of content. They don't have to be long. Lawyers just cringe because they're thinking, oh, this is going to be a 1,500 word article. I don't have time. I'm talking about a paragraph, or here are the top 3 things to do when litigation might roar its ugly head to prevent it from happening. Or here are 3 steps, small bits of information that are relevant to your clients. So all of it ties into this change that's happening in the practice of law, from where we just sit back and say, we are experts at doing tax work or employment work or litigation or transactional or mergers, but we're going to share that expertise with you and have you be part of this information process as well and contribute with us.
So besides posting on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, LinkedIn, what are some other authority places that lawyers can write content like pretty easily? I know we've seen people writing on like Medium or even Tumblr. Do you have any recommendations on how an attorney can get started if they've never been in that space before?
Well, in my opinion, the most important thing to do is LinkedIn. If you're going to tweet, and you're going to tweet 3 or 4 times a day and you want to become a thought leader, fine. But LinkedIn is the #1 social media for business. And we know by looking at the numbers that most businesses, even the C-level executives, are on LinkedIn. So imagine if you're posting content on that, and maybe you're writing a post and then you take one of your clients and you interview them a little bit and find out something about the industry, and you write a 1-paragraph post with a nice image, and you keep making these posts, and then maybe you post them so they appear on your profile page on LinkedIn, so that if clients come to check you out, they can see you have content, articles on your profile page. Which gets me to the biggest problem. If you're going to be on LinkedIn, optimize your profile. I have a document I can send you that you can offer to your listeners on the definitive guide for why LinkedIn has to be used by lawyers. And it goes through how to optimize your profile, starting with making sure you have a high resolution picture and that, that big rectangle behind your headshot. A lot of people leave that default turquoise blue image with the white lines running through it. And that just shows you don't really care, you're not really up to speed. You need a cover image that sort of represents who you are, what you do. And you need to make sure you're optimizing and putting in the content in your summary statement, and then your experiences, and then posting articles, getting recommendations. So that would be my #1 advice, is to understand LinkedIn a little bit better. Happy to share this article. It's not the be all end all. It's just a 4-page article, but it will help people start to understand. And engage. Go to your home feed on LinkedIn, scroll down your feed twice a day for 5 minutes and make comments on other people's posts. It's one thing to like it, but if you take the time to actually look at an article, maybe someone in your industry posted and you just grazed it and you picked up an interesting fact. Grace, I enjoyed learning this particular idea about the hospitality industry. I didn't know that existed. Grace gets an email and it says, oh, Mary Neitlich just posted, made a comment on your LinkedIn post. She's going to feel pretty good about that. So this is what lawyers are missing. This is how the practice of law is changing. It's this whole problem solving, removing the pain from the client, and being a content leader to show them your expertise. In conclusion, I would just say it's all about the client. And for years, it's been all about the law firm. This is how much we charge. We're raising our rates. We didn't even bother telling you, here's your new invoice. It's now about making sure we're communicating with clients and creating this predictability and efficiency and understanding the technologies and big changes. And I think lawyers need to start to read and adapt because alternative legal service providers are becoming big and artificial intelligence. So I think it's just time to face the changes and start to dance to that new music.
I like that expression.
I just wanted to segue back into that additional, creating, really focusing on making yourself an authoritative figure in the legal space besides posting on LinkedIn. I know that you offer trainings on TED Talks, and I thought that was a really interesting offering. And I don't see that many places, and I know how important it is to get that public speaking experience and also the credibility behind a TED Talk. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and why you chose specifically to focus on TED Talks?
Sure. 30 years ago, when I started to do presentation skill training, I modeled my work after a program I was certified in that came from the UCLA Lab School, the School of Education. And it very much involved active participation and retention, how to help people remember what you said. And over the years, the most important thing that came out of that was storytelling. Who doesn't like to hear a good story? And I gravitated to TED Talks and went through some training and delivered some TED Talks. And I train partners now in how do you tell a story about what you're doing rather than have PowerPoint slides that you're reading to the audience or having many bullet points. So a TED Talk might have 2 or 3 PowerPoint slides, but typically they might be a graph or it might be images that portray your story. And you need to think about, what is the story I want to tell? How do I engage? And immediately start telling the story. And of course, there's body language involved with not pacing and walking around and wildly flailing, but planting your feet and using your arms in a large way to express. It shows you're knowledgeable, but focusing, you have 15 to 17 minutes to tell your story. So what are those critical points and how do I engage with stories? And I think I also have an article on this about TED Talks, so I'll send that to you as well. But it really, the clients that have gone, my clients, lawyers that have gone to their clients, and instead of doing the, let me tell you about me, let me tell you about my firm, let me tell you about my partners, let me tell you more about me, so enough about me, what do you think about me? And so instead of doing that about cases, and tell stories, tell success stories, tell how they solve problems. And the lawyers that have gone and done this and maybe even used a cartoon as their PowerPoint or had no PowerPoint, come out with work, come out with long-term relationships because they get to know this person and they're not seeing them as someone who is reading me bullet points off a PowerPoint slide.
I think that information will be really useful. I know a lot of people want to speak, want to get up there, but just don't know where to start or think they can even do it. What is your website and what's the best way for listeners to get a hold of you directly?
My website is EM, like in extreme marketing, which is what I used to be, but I changed it to just EM Consults, CONSULTS.org, O-R-G, emconsults.org. And I'm simply Mary, but it's MERRY, which is not intuitive, but Mary at emconsults.org. Happy to take emails and answer any questions your listeners might have.
Great. Sounds good. And yeah, all the materials there that can be found, on the website that you just mentioned. Also, we'll feature some of those materials on ours as well, with your permission, of course. And
yes, that would be great. Terrific. I hope it'll be helpful to your readers, or excuse me, to your listeners who might become readers.
We actually do transcribe a lot of the podcasts. So, people that aren't into the audio for some reason or another, or can't listen at the time, they can get transcription. So we do that as well.
Okay.
So very easily, readers. But we really appreciate your time. This is a great topic, a lot of great takeaways. And thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Legal Mastermind podcast. If you're interested in working with Ryan and Chase, please email mastermind@marketmymarket.com. Make sure to join the free mastermind group for growing and managing your firm at lawfirmmastermind.com. Ryan Klein and Chase Williams are the managing partners at Market My Market, one of the top legal marketing companies in the United States.